The old estate had been in the Smith family for generations, a sprawling manor that whispered secrets from its shadowy corners. It was a place where every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the curtains, held the weight of 1,000 memories. The Smiths, a tight-knit family of 4, had always been cautious not to upset the delicate equilibrium of the house. On a chilly autumn evening, the family gathered in the musty attic to sort through their late grandmother's belongings. Her passing had come as a solemn reminder of their familial bonds, and the task of sifting through her possessions was an emotional one. Amidst the stacks of old books, moth-eaten clothes, and dusty trinkets, a tarnished antique mirror stood propped against the wall. Its ornate frame, though faded and peeling, still exuded an eerie elegance. The glass was cloudy, veiled with a sense of timelessness that sent shivers down their spines. The eldest of the Smith siblings, Eleanor, was drawn to the mirror. She gazed at it, her reflection distorted in the aged glass. A memory, a story she'd heard in hushed whispers as a child, emerged from the depths of her mind. The mirror was cursed, they said, a relic of an old family curse. Those who looked into it saw their deepest fears, and the mirror had a way of making those fears come to life. Her brother, Michael, chuckled at the legends. "You don't still believe in that nonsense, do you, Ellie?" Their parents, Sarah and John, shared a skeptical glance, but there was unease in their eyes. The mirror had always held a dark fascination for the family, a relic passed down through the generations, never displayed but never discarded. Eleanor shook her head, dismissing her own momentary dread. "Of course not. It's just an old mirror. Grandma was a bit superstitious, that's all." The mirror found its place in the attic, and life in the Smith household resumed its routine. Days turned into weeks, and the mirror became a distant memory. But the uneasy feeling lingered, like a shadow in the corners of their minds. Late one night, Eleanor, unable to sleep, tiptoed to the attic. A strange compulsion had taken hold of her, a need to confront the antique mirror. She reached out and touched its cool surface, her reflection wavering like a shadow. A feeling of dread washed over her as her own reflection transformed. The once familiar face contorted into something monstrous, a grotesque version of herself. She tried to pull away, but an unseen force held her gaze. In the mirror, she saw her deepest fear, her family, lifeless, lying in coffins. Gasping, she stumbled back, sweat-soaked and trembling. The vision had been so real, and the fear it instilled was paralyzing. But as the days passed, she convinced herself it was a trick of her own mind. Then, it began to happen to the others. Michael, who had mocked the curse, saw a vision of drowning in an endless sea, the water pulling him under, suffocating him. He awoke drenched in sweat, gasping for air. Sarah, who had always been strong-willed, saw a vision of her family turning against her, their eyes filled with hatred and malice. She woke up screaming in the dark. John, the stoic father, saw a vision of his children in mortal danger, and he was helpless to save them. The fear ate at him, gnawing at his resolve. The antique mirror had awakened their deepest fears and projected them into their waking lives. They tried to dismiss it as mere nightmares, but they couldn't shake the overwhelming sense of dread. As the Smith family's encounters with the mirror grew more frequent and terrifying, they found themselves spiraling into paranoia and despair. The once close family now lived in a state of constant fear, their sanity fraying at the edges. Eleanor, who had been the first to experience the mirror's curse, became obsessed with researching its origins. She discovered an old family journal, hidden away in the attic, belonging to a distant relative who had lived in the 18th century. The journal contained entries that described the cursed mirror and its malevolent powers. According to the journal, the mirror had been in the family for centuries, passed down through generations. It was said to have been created by a disturbed ancestor who had dabbled in dark arts. The curse, it seemed, was unbreakable. Desperation and fear pushed the family to the brink. They considered destroying the mirror, but each time they tried, they were overcome by an inexplicable force that prevented them from causing any harm to it. Their lives were consumed by the relentless cycle of fear and despair as the mirror continued to feed on their deepest nightmares, distorting their perception of reality. One fateful night, unable to bear the torment any longer, Michael decided to confront the mirror. He stood before it, staring at his own reflection, and challenged the malevolent force within. "I won't be afraid," he whispered, his voice trembling. The reflection distorted, and the room grew dark. Michael's vision blurred, and he felt an icy grip around his throat. In the mirror, he saw himself, lifeless and hanging from the rafters. But something in him resisted. With every ounce of willpower, he fought the terror, wresting control from the mirror. Slowly, the grip around his throat loosened, and he stumbled away from the mirror, gasping for air. With newfound determination, he called his family, who had gathered in the corridor, and relayed his experience. They realized that the mirror's power relied on their fear. To break the curse, they needed to face their fears head-on, to confront the worst that the mirror could conjure. One by one, they took their turn, standing before the mirror, facing their deepest fears, and refusing to yield to the terror. Each time, the mirror's grip weakened, and the visions grew less vivid. Eleanor saw her family in coffins, but refused to accept it. Sarah faced her family's hatred and held on to her love for them. John confronted his inability to protect his children and vowed to keep them safe. The Smith family's confrontation with the mirror had given them a false sense of security. While their determination had weakened the mirror's grip, they had yet to grasp the true extent of its malevolence. Eleanor, ever the curious one, began to delve deeper into the family's history. She uncovered an unsettling truth. Not only had the mirror been passed down for generations, but each previous owner had met a tragic and untimely end. The more she discovered, the more paranoid she became. Her sleepless nights were filled with the nightmares the mirror had conjured, making her question her family's safety. The torment was unrelenting, and she grew convinced that the mirror was more than just a cursed relic. It was an entity with a sinister agenda. The Smith family's struggle against the haunted mirror continued as their lives spiraled further into chaos. The mirror's malevolence became more cunning, manifesting horrors beyond their deepest fears. In the darkness, Michael saw malevolent figures lurking, waiting to pounce. Sarah's nightmares took on a more insidious form, a shadowy figure tormenting her in the dead of night. John's visions of his children in danger became real, with accidents and close calls sending tremors through the family. Every time they confronted their fears, they felt a temporary release, but the mirror's grip remained. It was as if the mirror fed on their courage, growing stronger with each encounter. Eleanor's obsession with the mirror led her to a startling discovery. She came across an ancient incantation hidden within a forgotten diary, which claimed to hold the power to sever the mirror's connection to the family. Desperate and feeling responsible for the curse's presence, Eleanor decided to perform the incantation. Alone in the attic, she lit candles, recited the cryptic words, and held her breath. The mirror seemed to shudder, its surface rippling like dark water. For a moment, the oppressive atmosphere lifted, and Eleanor felt a sense of triumph. But the moment was fleeting. The mirror retaliated, pulling her into its depths. Her reflection transformed into a monstrous version of herself, her eyes filled with malevolence. The family rushed to the attic, their hearts pounding with fear. Eleanor stood before the mirror, locked in a nightmarish struggle with her malevolent reflection. As they watched, the mirror's power intensified. The room grew dark, a tempest of fear swirling around Eleanor. Her own reflection taunted her, whispering her darkest secrets, amplifying her terror. She struggled, her voice choked by the force trying to pull her into the glass. With a surge of determination, the family united, their love and resolve overpowering the mirror's malevolence. They recited the incantation, their voices trembling but resolute. The mirror's surface contorted and shattered, releasing Eleanor from its grasp. The mirror lay in ruins, its curse finally broken. The family, weary but triumphant, gathered the shattered remnants and buried them deep in the backyard, hoping to forever banish the malevolence that had plagued their lives. Years passed, and the Smith family's lives slowly returned to normal. The curse had left its scars, but they had emerged stronger and more connected. Eleanor was now a respected author, penning a book about their harrowing experience with the haunted mirror. But despite their apparent victory, there was always a lingering sense of dread. The mirror's curse had left an indelible mark on their lives. They couldn't shake the feeling that the malevolence might one day return. One evening, as they sat around the dinner table, sharing laughter and stories, the room grew cold and the lights flickered. The shattered remnants of the mirror, once buried in the backyard, began to piece themselves back together, reforming with an ominous, pulsing glow. The family's faces paled as they realized the curse had not been completely vanquished. The malevolence was back, and it was more powerful than ever.
I'm an icon, man. My girl about a 10. I should fuck her in a bed.